everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Harnessing Satellite Technology for Smarter Vegetation Management. My name is Sabrina, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager at Up42. I will be your host today. Before I get started and introduce the speakers, there are two things that you should know about the webinar platform we're using today. There is a dedicated questions tab that you can use to ask us any question you like. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so please do so. There is also a chat window where you can interact with us or let us know if you're facing any technical difficulties. And now back to our speakers. I'm very excited to have two speakers from AiDASH joining us today, Niharika, VP of Product, and Rishu, Senior Director, Customer Success. And on the Up42 side, we have Yusi, our CPO, and Vasilis, one of our Customer Success Managers, working very closely with AiDASH. We will do a quick intro to the Up42 platform that will be followed by a presentation by AiDASH, where Niharika will talk about Earth observation data and how it is transforming vegetation management, as well as the different data types they're using and also how they're using the Up42 platform. We will have a panel discussion as well as a Q&A session as mentioned. And now, since we saw that there are some new joiners today, we wanted to start with a short introduction to the Up42 platform and marketplace. Our goal at Up42 is to simplify data access, streamline data management, and empower imagery processing for more seamless downstream integrations. Why do we do that, and who do we help? We have hundreds of customers around the globe with geospatial teams that are discovering, accessing, and processing data on the Up42 platform. And our goal and our aim is to help them by removing the technical and commercial barriers around geospatial data so that they can go to market faster. And we do that by leveraging the Up42 platform, which has four main offerings. The catalog provides you standardized access to a wide range of data, optical, both satellite and aerial data, SAR, as well as elevation data. You can also task a satellite to get fresh imagery. And lastly, and after you have ordered your data, we would harmonize the metadata as well as the deliveries into standardized products so you can integrate them much faster. And lastly, you can also enhance your data or get actionable insights at scale using Up42 processing. All of this is available through our web interface, the console, API, Python SDK, as well as add-ons such as the Esri ArcGIS Pro add-in. And we did mention standardized access to data and processing. We work with over 80 plus partners around the globe to deliver you the data and processing algorithms you need. And it's, of course, very hard to do justice to all of them. Here are some of the partners that we work with, such as Vexel, Umbra, Black Sky, Airbus, ISI, Planet, and many more. And what are the use cases? You can use the Up42 geospatial platform for pretty much any use case, ranging from precision agriculture to engineering, construction, urban planning, environmental monitoring, forestry, infrastructure monitoring, and vegetation management, just to name a few. And I think this is a great time to hand it over to Niharika, which will be deep diving into one of those downstream applications.
Thanks, Sabrina. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so before we get into downstream applications, I'm going to give a very quick introduction about AiDASH and what is it that we do, and then get into our applications and how do we leverage Up42 and satellite imagery to power those. So as a firm, we are a 6-year-old firm, started in 2019. We went live with our first customer in the utility space by 2020. And ever since we have come a long way, won a lot of awards in the sustainability or the green tech space in the US and globally, and grown from one customer that we started out with to 185 customers that we have today. In addition, we are backed by investors, marquee names both in the energy space and utilities that are looking to invest from across the world. Now, at its core, what our products do is that we aim to solve the pressing needs of the grid. We want to drive their safety and reliability but do it in a fashion that's affordable, do it in a fashion that fosters biodiversity and is sustainable for the future. So we have 4 main products, very quickly touching upon them and then getting deeper into the use cases. Our intelligent wedge management system aims to solve the need for wedge management being the biggest O&M expense and yet being a driver of many of the power outages that you see today. What we do is you leverage the power of satellites and other sources of data to come up with recommendations that help utilities manage their wedge management more efficiently. This is already deployed on more than 1 million miles of transmission and distribution lines. And what we've seen consistently is utilities being able to lower their wedge management expenses by 5 to 20%. At the same time, being able to improve their grid reliability by 10 to 20%. If we move forward, what we extended this into is a climate risk intelligence product, because while we can solve for wedge management in fair weather, even in extreme cases, whether it's storms or wildfires, most of the outages are caused by trees. And in response to that, the product that we have is the climate risk intelligence system. Now, this aims to give you intelligence in advance about the kind of storms that your network might be facing, the kind of impact that it may have, the kind of wildfire risk it may have. And this helps utilities improve their restoration time, decrease the cost of managing the storm. And we have seen that we have been able to accurately forecast outages for storms by over 85%. Similarly, on the wildfire side, utilities are able to get a view of their wildfire risk up to 72 hours in advance and plan their operations in a way that can improve their resilience. If we extend it further, what we have talked about is the vegetation and the climate risks so far. But utilities also have inherent asset risks, and what we enable them to do is also look at the health of their assets, the location and health of their assets. And this is our asset inspection and monitoring system. This leverages imagery and helps utilities know exactly where their assets are and what they are, which enables them to inspect in a faster way with a reduced cost. And we do this all while managing biodiversity in a smarter way on the land that different firms manage. So if you think about whatever I've spoken about, ultimately we are talking about industries where we have millions and millions of lines spanning over hundreds of thousands of kilometers. So inspecting and monitoring the entire grid is a huge challenge. And what we do is enable inspection, using the inspection findings, being able to mitigate the risks and then audit them for transmission, substations, and distributions. I'm going to go a little faster on some of this and go over into some of our key use cases, but effectively what we're looking to do is, instead of giving multiple point solutions, have a unified solution that enables you to do everything. And the approach that we take to do this is a satellite-first approach. So what this means is that we leverage the power of satellites to scan the entire network first. Once we know exactly what are the risks and where, if required, we leverage other sources of data like drones, aerial imagery, LiDAR for a more targeted inspection, combining this all in our platform to give multiple types of insights at different levels of granularity, whether it be related to vegetation, terrain, assets, all of those. And this is what powers the products that we were speaking about, our wedge management, climate risk, and asset inspection products. So if you step back, what we are trying to do is giving utilities a view, a bird's eye view of where their risks are, being able to inspect them, being able to use it to predict tasks, apply business constraints, and actually execute tasks in the field, and then being able to audit their completed work. And one of the important pieces in all of this is how do we enable the satellite-first approach, which is where UP42 comes in. So if we go deeper into how we at AiDASH leverage UP42, We pretty much use them in all the different use cases that we have. I'm going to talk about the two main ones. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the intelligent wedge management use case. Now, what we're doing here is around the grid that we are monitoring, we are looking at trying to pick out what vegetation is there. Are there trees? Are there bushes? Are there grasslands? What's the density? What's the proximity? What are they healthy or unhealthy? All of this to give intelligence into where should a utility send their crew, what is and what is the kind of surgical intervention that they should make to make their vegetation management more efficient. Similarly, if we look at asset inspections, what we are looking to do is leverage imagery to determine accurately the location of assets. So we enable asset conflation. At the same time, being able to look at encroachments, structural encroachments, man-made encroachments around the assets as well, to look at any sort of risk around an asset. And when we do this, we leverage multiple types of data. Satellite data is the first one that we leverage in our satellite first approach. So when we talk of satellite data, we are often looking at multispectral data in the range of 15 to 50 centimeter resolution. This is enhanced by other sources of data. For example, we use aerial imaging, which goes from 5.5 to 15 centimeters. And a lot of our use cases are reliant on also being able to get a 3D view of what's happening around the grid. And this is something that gets enabled using imagery that DSMs, so what these DSMs do is they enable us to create elevation models. And these elevation models give us a view of what's the height of different features. And we'll get into some of this example later as well. But we use DSMs both from satellite and aerial-based imagery. What we do at AiDASH is leveraging the data that we receive from UP42. We also combine data in multiple ways. So for example, what you're seeing here is an example where we have a power grid. And to understand what is the clearance of vegetation around it, we are combining multispectral data, and we are combining it with DSM to be able to get to clearance, to say exactly which trees are how far from a power line and whether they are at risk or not. Now, what this looks like, if you log in, so as we work through this, if we look at the portal that UP42 gives to us, what this looks like is, for example, what the blue box here is an area of interest. If we want to look at what are our options in terms of imagery around an area of interest, we can always log into this portal and look at the many different options that we have. And that's one of the advantages of working with UP42, that we're not looking at imagery from one source alone. We are able to look at multiple sources of imagery, see what's their availability, also see what their different attributes of interest are. So for example, you already see a filter here that we want to only look at those images where the cloud cover is less than 20%. Or if you want to see only the highest resolution ones. And then being able to see whether we have the right kind of coverage, whether the right kind of recency, and so on. While I talk about this, ultimately, when we are trying to do this at scale for the 1 million miles of network that we speak about, using a portal manually is not something that is feasible. So we have a deep integration with UP42, where we leverage UP42 APIs to power our own platform and automate this entire process. So if we need to search for what imagery is there, what's feasible, look at the UP42 catalog, or work with UP42 to task a new order for many of the different sources that they have. We use APIs that are integrated with each other to do the many different steps that are involved. And as an example, any new utility that we engage with for a new use case has multiple steps involved where UP42 plays a part. So for example, if we get into a new utility project, we need to determine for a particular geography, is there imagery which already exists, and is it something that can be leveraged for the use case at hand? We are able to do this just using APIs at scale, using UP42. If we don't have the right kind of imagery, we are also able to create new requests. So a tasking request is one where we work with UP42 to task a satellite to capture a particular type of imagery with a particular type of specification. And if imagery is not already available, we are able to raise a tasking request at scale and then eventually pull it into our own AiDASH platform for further processing using AI models and for analysis. Ultimately, what it comes down to is making sure that for every customer that we at AiDASH serve, for every use case that we serve, we are doing this in a way that is timely, that has the best quality, while being at the right price point, so that ultimately when we are serving our customers and helping them become more safe and reliable, but in an affordable fashion, we are able to do that at our end using these three parameters. So as an example, there's a lot of complexity in satellite imagery and the platforms that power them. But ultimately, we are able to leverage different attributes like the age of an image, the resolution of an image, the angle from which it was taken, did it take long to acquire, or the actual timing of issuance, and being able to leverage all of this, being able to consider multiple variables to power our algorithms. So ultimately, what using UP42 gives to us is a lot of flexibility. We can work with multiple vendors and multiple data types. We can task for stereo imagery, we can task for mono imagery, which means 3D imagery, 2D imagery, all sorts of imagery, whether it's satellite or aerial and so on. It gives us the speed because we are doing this in an integrated fashion with APIs at scale. So it gives us the speed that allows us to work fast. And then this allows us to do this at scale so that when we are serving our 185 customers and more, when we are doing this over our 1 million miles of network and more, we are able to do this seamlessly in a time that makes sense for our end customers and utilities as well, all from a single platform. So this is a glimpse of how ultimately it looks. The initial platform, the initial portal that I was showing is something that can be used for one imagery order, but ultimately when we are doing this at scale and we are working with APIs, what we're doing is working with code like this, and everything that you see as an end customer gets achieved through just APIs and code. So Sabrina, back to you.
So much, Niharika, for this great presentation and overview. I would like to invite the panelists now back. Let's give everyone a second. And yes, while we wait for Vasilis to join, maybe actually Niharika or Rishu, the first question to AiDASH. You touched a little bit on it during the presentation, and you talked a lot about the use case itself, but what are maybe the main challenges that you see with existing approaches to vegetation management, again, to compare to your approach?
Yeah, so I can take that one, Rabina, and talk about it a little, but essentially, if you look at how utilities do wedge management traditionally, a lot of it is based on time-based information and time-based cycles. So what that means is that typically a utility will know when is it that they last went out and inspected a particular part of their line. What was the condition of the line at that point of time? And they have, using the knowledge of the crew that's been working on the field for years, using the knowledge of how they have acted in the past, they have certain rules as to when they would inspect it again. There are also utilities that leverage other remote sensing methods to look at the condition of the network, but at the same time, given that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of miles, it's always a trade-off between what is the recent information versus what is, and essentially what is actually happening on the ground and how fast are you able to get it. So those are the kind of typical methods in which we see utilities work. So either time-based methods where they are going more rule-based, or if they are leveraging different types of sensing technologies, being able to do it for a small part of the network at a smaller scale, or it taking a lot of time and cost to be able to actually inspect.
And maybe this leads me nicely also to, like, if we can talk a little bit about the metrics. So when we talk about satellite-based approach, how do the metrics compare to the more traditional approaches? Also, maybe how do you see the evolution of those metrics in the future as also technology continues to evolve? Maybe you, Vishu, and then potentially Niharika, if you want to add something.
So for our customers, there are three aspects which are very important for them. One is vegetation management typically is a big constituent of their annual expense budget. So how can they reduce the expenses for vegetation management? Second is how do they improve, they have typically their own reliability targets, which is around SAIFI, and customer interruptions. How do they improve that? And eventually both of them, the reliability also leads to increased customer satisfaction, right? So these are the three areas where our customers typically focus on. And what we have seen is that the traditional methods that what Niharika was describing often lack precision, where they are sending crews, but now what satellite technology and AI does is you can be more precise, and you can make them shift to condition-based trimming, where based on that, like where you eventually want to trim, right? So we have seen that on the expenses side, where you are more precise, you can see the cost going down by 5 to 20% in terms of vegetation management expenses, right? And secondly, an outcome of that is also like, where the risks are more precisely. You can be more focused in taking remediation actions at the right places. And what we have seen is that within the same budget, that the grids have seen 10% to 20% improvement in grid reliability, which is also reducing the CI. And when it comes to the upsides that are available, if you see the satellite advances, improving resolutions, and AI models advancing, we even see that preciseness and also like new data sources, the power that we're getting through advancement of the technology, we see that we will be able to even achieve further more benefits for our customers going forward.
I was going to say already pretty impressive metrics and numbers that you're sharing here. So yeah, looking forward to how they will continue to improve in the future. And maybe, given we're all here today, I wanted to also talk a little bit about the partnership between AiDASH and Up42. So maybe starting with you see what innovations in the partnership between AiDASH and Up42 have made the biggest impact from your perspective. I think, probably a question to all of our participants today. Feel free to chime in with your perspectives.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Dobrina. And I think there are many kind of innovation elements I could talk about, and also like from the end customer perspective, Niharika and Rishu were already like explaining what kind of a difference the AiDASH solution makes for them. So there are many innovative elements, but perhaps from our perspective, one thing like to mention is that AiDASH is actually an interesting company. We are working with a lot of companies growing fast, and then often these companies are making statements and plans and expansion plans which are super ambitious. And AiDASH is an interesting company because they are always actually basically meeting those plans and ambitions and exceeding them. So I think from our perspective, it's been really one major factor has been just like the volume and way how you've been pushing the growth on our collaboration, which means that like you have been pushing the boundaries of what we are offering, like how we can actually automate things, how we can deliver things in large scale via the APIs, and it's been great partnership from that perspective. That you've been kind of challenging us to step up the automation, step up the scalability of the platform, and that's been really, I think, one like leading theme and an innovation here. And not only like us, I think you've been pushing also the whole industry, like managing so large projects that to be honest, there are some basically scalability bottlenecks in the industry in getting actually enough like high resolution stereo captured satellite imagery to serve all your projects. So we have been like forced and pushed to also look at the different alternatives and then find ways of working how we can actually bring alternative data sets so that you can actually leverage those and then fulfill those ambitious projects. So I think that would be my kind of a number one take on that.
It's great when two companies can also grow together and challenge themselves. Anything from AiDASH?
Yeah, just to add, when we started working with Up42 almost 5 years back, we were primarily focusing on one source of imagery, one type of imagery. And we were, of course, doing it at a much smaller scale, as you just mentioned. And as we have gone deeper into the world of veg management and all the different use cases and products that we now have, the type of imagery that we used has expanded. We have definitely worked with Up42 to get more and more vendors and sources and types of imagery onto the platform in a way that can be served programmatically and at scale. And we have seen a greater use case for being able to task, so being able to get imagery on demand. And yes, I think as we go forward, there are definitely avenues to take more and more of that to a bigger scale.
Thank you, Niharika. And you covered already the types of data that AiDASH is using currently. Maybe back to you, Lucy, if you could share, are there any other types of data that our product team is planning on bringing to the platform that could be relevant to the work that AiDASH is doing or will be doing in the future?
Yes, I think for sure, and we are working on some of those data sets together. But yeah, we are looking at like expanding the types of data sets that we offer by the platform. Satellite imagery, aerial imagery, digital surface models were mentioned, but there are also like new types of satellite imagery, hyperspectral data potentially could be interesting for some use cases, thermal data, and so forth. And then also data captured in different ways. We've been exploring things like data captured with drones, different types of aerial captures, also like LiDAR data could be a great example of actually monitoring some of the assets. So we are continuing on that path of actually diversifying and expanding the data portfolio.
Great to hear, because with the satellite first approach, we do see that there are use cases where we want to leverage satellite to then do targeted inspections using LiDAR, drones, aerial imagery. Thermal imagery is definitely of interest. And as we get more and more of those on the platform, I think it can just unlock a lot more of what we can do.
Great, our roadmap. And we've talked a lot about the use case, the challenges, the impact on the metrics. I want to also talk a little bit about the day-to-day interaction between the two companies, and maybe starting with Vasilis. Can you tell me a little bit about how this daily interaction looks like? How has it also evolved in the past couple of years?
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
Yes, in the beginning, we were 3 people from our side, and there was 1 person from the AiDASH side responsible for ordering data. Since then, both companies have grown. From the AiDASH side, we talk daily to 3 or 4 people. From our side, we're around 5 to 6. A couple of us are almost exclusively dedicated to helping AiDASH. You get all kinds of requests, tasking requests. Sometimes some of the projects are very big. So one sensor, one provider is not enough. So we have to diversify, go to 2 or 3 different providers and offer proposition to AiDASH. For example, 50%, let's try with this provider, 30% with another. We're also having daily syncs. In the beginning, we had once a month or every 2 months, but lately we're having syncs with the team on a weekly basis. Sometimes while the tasking is ongoing, if we see that one provider is struggling, we switch to another. So there's this back and forth constantly. Our teams are very well acquainted, and we're trying our best to plan the season. And also, in the end of each tasking season, we have a retro, and we talk about the things that went well, things we would like to change from both sides. And before each tasking season, we have another big meeting where we're trying to plan things. And yeah, the sooner you plan, especially the big projects, the better.
Sure,
I
see
would
you
just
want
like to
to
add, definitely see the relationship being more strategic. And so first, I would like to acknowledge that our collaboration with you guys have been a cornerstone of our success. And so, as you know, like we are dealing with, as Niharika was mentioning, around 185 customers, and it is important for us, as you would have seen, like timeliness and quality is a imperative for our operations, and that is where the daily interactions even become more important. And over the period, as you were describing, the relationship has certainly evolved. Like when we, even for our strategic customers, when we see that there is a delay in timeline, the team has been very forthcoming in suggesting what are other channel partners that we can explore to meet those timelines. I think the other key highlight is you guys made a dashboard just customized for us to track whatever orders that we had, whatever orders that we have made, how are we progressing amidst them, which also helps us to think about alternative strategies if you want to meet our deadlines. The other thing I wanted to specifically highlight is the modes of communication, which has been very proactive with Up42, specifically the dedicated Slack channel where team can reach out in case there are certain API issues or other resolutions that are needed. Lastly, we also appreciate you focusing on our customer experience, where the team highlights that you consistently ask, like, how can we improve the experience either through the platform or certain technology interventions which could help us, file timely tickets, or, for example, like the dashboards that we have made. So definitely we have seen the evolution from just a data acquisition partner to a strategic consultative partner who is mutually helping us to ensure our success in delivering value to our clients.
Thank you so much. That's always great to hear. And Vasilis, you did touch a little bit upon it, but I'm not sure if you want to give an example of, again, how our team would approach a more complex project or more urgent project, anything that you want to add specifically. If not, we can, of course, move on to the next questions.
I can explain this a little deeper. For example, we might have a big project with 120 AIs that AiDASH would like to task. For high resolution satellite providers, usually capacity is not there for just one sensor to cover this, so we will diversify between 2 or 3 different sensors. And then we might switch resources we might ask the providers to focus in certain areas. So we're in sync with AiDASH in that case, and for example, from these 120 AIs, perhaps 30 are higher priority, and we should prioritize these. So we're going to push the providers to prioritize these, and then move on with the rest. We also have archive alternatives. Lately, we've been exploring drone tasking in case of smaller areas not being successfully captured with satellites. You always have to take into account the weather, the location, competition from other projects. We need to take into account all these variables and try and succeed. And what we need to know is the AOIs, the size, the timeline. Always we try to buffer it a little bit, because tasking is basically a guess of what might happen in the future. You have an idea of the weather patterns, but you're not sure. certain always. We also had situations in with some other customers, for example, where geopolitical changes might create problems with certain providers, so we had to offer alternatives for that reason. So testing is a very dynamic and interesting business, full of surprises, and that's where I think the power of App 42 lies, because by diversifying the sourcing of data, you protect basically the success of your project.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vasilis. And I mean, you did use the word climate, which would lead me to the next change, even though you used it in a very different direction. But I was wondering how much of AiDASH's work is actually related to, you touched a little bit upon it, Niharika, to climate change and climate-driven weather disasters, and what emerging threats do you foresee in vegetation management as, of course, climates around the globe continue to evolve and change? Is that a big topic for you at AiDASH?
Yes, absolutely. I think whether we are speaking to a utility about the vegetation management use cases or specifically about the climate use cases, how climate is changing across the world and how it's impacting us today is a big topic. Ultimately, it's something that touches everyone. Nobody can really escape those effects, and it even for wedge management teams, that effect is amplified because a lot of what happens or what causes outages or increases the risk of wildfires is vegetation. So when we work with within the scope of our wedge management product as well, apart from looking at risks or apart from telling utilities where the risks are due to vegetation, we are also layering that with information on risks due to climate. So where is the risk of a storm being high? Where's the risk of wildfire ignition being high? Also, that utilities can also leverage that information and make a more surgical or a more targeted decision as to what should they prioritize versus not. If we talk about a climate risk product in itself, that's all about managing the climate risks, whether they be related to vegetation or not. So there we are going beyond just vegetation. While vegetation plays a huge role, it's not the only thing that ends up affecting utilities. So how can they holistically manage or mitigate the risks of climate, whether it be storms, wildfires, flooding around their network? How can they be better prepared? How can they be more aware and then use it to restore power faster once the event has happened? How can they make sure that their end customers, who are the end consumers, they are not without power for a long time? So when we are talking about our work in any of the products, climate is an important angle that we deal with. If we just extend it to our asset product as well, one is looking at how the assets are today, being able to monitor them. But then can we also look at how climate is set to change 10, 20, 30 years out into the future, and use that information and the risks associated with it to take the right actions today, make the right asset interventions today, and basically make the grid resilient to long-term climate change. So that's another thing that we deal with. So if we talk about whatever we are doing with utilities, I think climate plays a big role in all of it.
And I'm also wondering, I mean, whether it's climate related or just other topics in general, how do you engage stakeholders, like, for example, regulators, in adopting the practices that we're discussing today? How can also technology help address some of those specific requirements and challenges? Maybe, yeah, Rishu, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, sure, Datina. Engaging regulators is a very critical part of driving them on the adoption of the wedge management approaches. And we recognize it requires a more collaborative approach. And the first thing that we do is we do recognize that the importance of meeting regulators where they are. And that is why we participate in the regulatory and industry events where these regulators are present, which help us to understand their concerns, share our insights, and also offer us opportunities to build relationships at those forums. Second, what we have done is that we have partnered with a panel of experienced consultants who are specialized in regulatory affairs. So these are the folks who help us position our products better to the regulators and help them understand how these are win-win situations for both utility and their end customers. One of the recent examples that I want to talk about is the first flagship event that we had, Evolve, this year, where we invited 3 current state commissioners and the former chairman of FEREC. And it was a dynamic dialogue of how technology can be used to address some of the pressing challenges around the climate inflicting on utilities, on making the assets more climate adapted, right? And lastly, what we strongly believe is that our technology in itself is better positioned to address some of the regulatory challenges, right? So if you think about the goals of the regulatory authorities in general, which is more around ensuring that their consumers are protected and the system is more reliable, we believe that by helping utilities, we are better positioned to help them meet the regulatory requirements and also help regulatory authorities to provide greater good to their consumers. But having said that, it is more a proactive approach that we have adopted to reach out to them at the right forums and engage them even in shaping our solutions today.
Thank you. You talked a lot about technology and believing in the future of technology also. So I'm just wondering, are there any trends that you are mostly excited about when it comes to the future? No, this is one of those big questions that you have to hear at a panel discussion and probably a question to everyone here in the group. But what are the future trends in Earth observation and that you're most excited about, and how does this apply also to the 2 companies' plans?
I could talk about geospatial analytics, how it could evolve. So we feel like there are 3 macro trends, technology trends, which could shape the future of geospatial analytics. One is the increase in satellite launches. There are around 1,000 satellites being launched every year, and we see the resolution is improving and the cost is decreasing, right? Which makes us even more comfortable that we would be able to be more precise in our recommendations, right? Second is the increase in compute power. The technology is evolving, and now we can process massive data sets at scale with the increase in compute power. And third is evolution in AI and foundation models. Now, with limited training, with the models like GPTs and Geminis of the world, you can actually process multimodal data, not just like text data, but also images and other data, and which could be done at scale. Now, and multimodal data would also mean that you are able to harness the power of operational data, images data, or enterprise data, right? And together infuse them to derive insights. So these 3 macro trends leads to saying what does it mean? How could it help end users to make smarter decisions? One, it would help in democratization of insights. Now, with simpler UI interfaces and the ability to deal with complex data sources is much more easier for the end user today. And so even it is easy for them, for example, like the chat GPT, right? The technology is complex, but it is democratized and it's easy for end users who is even non-technical to understand and apply those. Right? Even that's something, that principle that we are even taking in IBMS, where our technology is complex, but it's so easy for the end user to derive insights, right? And that is mostly powered by the AI advancements. The second thing that we would want to say is the speed to insights. Now, with the increase in computational power now, and also the advancement in satellites, now you can actually get very near real-time insights around what is happening around, where the wedge risks are and where the climate risks are, and you can take actions almost in real time, right? Which helps you to first be more purposeful in allocating the resources, and secondly also mitigate the risk that affects downstream. Third, given the platform enables infusing different data sources and powering everyone, it also fosters collaboration between different teams having the same common source of truth, where the insights could be accessed, for example, by field groups or in different operation and maintenance departments. And lastly, given the integration, you can unlock new use cases. Niharika alluded to it, where we are thinking about the AI grid for utilities, where you can just not think about vegetation management, but also overlay the climate risk and intelligence system to predict where the outages could be because of the climate event, or there is risk of hazard tree, or even have like the entire network overlay to see where the assets are aging and the interventions need to be taken. So these are, I believe, like the three key trends that I talked about could lead in shaping the future of geospatial analytics.
Thank you so much. That was a very extensive answer. So I'm not sure if, of course, anyone else wants to add from our panelists.
Yeah, I think Rishi was listing a list of exciting trends. So I don't want to kind of bring new ones on the table, but perhaps just to build on some of those thoughts. I think what we see is also like you were talking about leveraging different types of data sets and feeding them into the solution and using them efficiently together. I think that's clearly something that we are seeing our customers to do more and more. And I would expand it even further, like outside of the Earth observation geospatial data sets, because what we're seeing is that like Earth observation data and geospatial, it's really becoming one element in this decision making, combined with all the other data sets that the companies are having in their exposure. And I think that will be like an important direction, and then we will see it more and more where Earth observation becomes one of the tools in the toolbox, and it's being combined as one sensor with the other signals.
Absolutely.
And we have received quite a lot of great questions, which I would also like to leave some time to answer. But maybe one final question to both AiDASH and Affordity, maybe Jussi, starting with you. And of course, depending on how much you can and you want to share already, what are the main product developments that from both sides that we should be looking forward to next year and beyond, maybe next year?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of exciting things that we're working on, and some of them continuing. But picking a few topics that we actually discussed, we talked about like discovering the right data for the right use cases, and I think that's one theme that we will be like working on, and like bringing new capabilities on the market in making it easy to discover the right type of data for right situations, and also automate that. Vasilis was talking about like how there's like back and forth finding the right data sets, and then we want to make it as fast and seamless experience as possible, and that's something that we will be working on. Another topic that you were mentioning was like getting more into like near real-time decision making and faster, and then shortening the cycle of actually getting the right data, and that's going to be a big theme for us also next year, like finding those cases where the data can be actually tasked immediately and then delivered fast to the customers, and like automating that process wherever possible. There are plethora of situations depending on the source provider and their capabilities and the size of the project and so on. So it doesn't always work for all the use cases, but we want to identify those ones that are possible, and then really automate and make the deliveries as fast as possible in those cases. A few examples.
Thank you so much, Jussi. And maybe Niharika, wish you anything you want to add on your side before we start with the Q&A and questions we received from the audience?
So yeah, I think as we look forward towards 2025, there are many different types of product developments and enhancements that we are focusing on. When we talk about our products, one is about being able to leverage the products and the technology we have for the many different use cases. We are looking to extend and make sure that what we can do in veg management goes beyond being able to trim in a cyclic manner, being able to have risks, but also then being able to pick out different types of risks. So can we leverage it for herbicide management, for picking out bug infestations and so on. At the same time, we want to deepen our offerings on the application itself so that it becomes easier to operationalize things in the field. Having a more robust field application, being able to scenario plan in a much more robust manner, and so on. If you talk about our climate risk product, a lot of our focus is on making those insights even more granular and making the refresh rate, increasing the refresh rate so that you can get insights fast, so that you can become even more targeted in your approach towards making your network resilient. And on the asset side, being able to fuse different sources of imagery and create a view of the network that gives a lot more intelligence than what we can get today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, for the amazing panel discussion. I really enjoyed it. And I see that we have received quite a lot of questions, which some of them we have answered already. So let me start with the first question. The question tab, it's for AiDASH. What has been the greatest surprise in your journey as a utility vegetation management solution provider? Are there any utility vegetation management pain points that you had not thought of when you embarked on that journey? That's a very interesting one.
Yeah, I think when we embarked on the journey and we started learning about vegetation management and utility, there's definitely been a lot of things that we have learned along the way. I think one of the things that had come as a surprise is that while we often used to speak about and hear utilities say that unhealthy trees were one of the biggest concerns for them. But along the way, we also learned that while unhealthy trees and hazard trees are of importance and they are something that every utility wants to tackle, in the case of a storm, it's actually the healthy trees that end up impacting utilities. And yeah, I would say it's a learning that's happened many years back, but it's something that that was very different from what we had initially set out and understood, because the initial focus was on these unhealthy trees and hazard trees. But the more we understood and realized is that as storm risks increase, as climate becomes more unpredictable, it is the healthy trees that also impact utilities. And so it's about knowing every tree on your network. It need not be the one in your right of way alone. Even trees outside of your right of way, even the healthy ones, are of importance for you to know, so that you know where that risk can come from.
Thank you, Niharika. And there was, I believe, another one, probably, yeah, for you definitely. Most providers supply imagery and data with 50 centimeter resolution, but most utility services require a lot more refined imagery than is in the millimeter range, as line plays a part in vegetation management with vegetation growing under the conductors.
Yeah.
I hope this one was clear.
Yeah, the question is absolutely clear. So typically, utilities will often not wait till vegetation is just millimeters away from a conductor, even with SAG, to actually act on it. What we are able to do with resolution, and we work with resolution. If you look at satellite alone, we have resolution from 30 centimeters up to 50 centimeters. If you look at other sources of data, the resolution becomes even better. But what this enables us to do is not wait till that last minute till you have only a millimeter or a few millimeters worth of clearance left, but pick out risks from trees as they start growing towards your lines. And really, any time that you have a tree which is within even approximately 3 to 5 feet, that's typically the risk range that we have seen most utilities act on. So 3 to 5 feet is one will typically absolutely act on it, and that's the kind of range that we can easily pick out with 30 centimeter or 50 centimeter data. So even with SAG assumptions, even with understanding SAG, we are able to tell what parts of the line are in the critical zone and start acting on them. And if we go towards lines which are more transmission, yeah, we can And if we really want to go to a millimeter level, we would go the satellite first approach, where we pick out those areas which have higher risk and then leverage other sources of imagery as well.
Thank you. And there is just a new one that just popped in. When requesting satellite imagery and specifying a region, if the imagery is retrieved from the archive with a recent capture date, let's say within the past month, will the pricing be the same as a new acquisition request due to the close capture date? So I believe that's more of a question for our team. Maybe Vasilis or Yusuf.
For most providers, archive and tasking have a different price point. It doesn't really matter if the image was captured last month or last week. Archive is archive, it has a certain price. Tasking is tasking, it has a certain price. There might be a couple of small exceptions, or in some cases, we might have a delay. Like, for example, one provider comes to mind, we have a buffer between when the customers can access this imagery on our platform. This depends on the specific agreement we have with this provider. But as a rule, no, tasking is usually more expensive and archive is cheaper and it has a stable price.
Thank you, Vasilis. And I believe back to AiDASH, so what are the products related to plantation and forest monitoring? This is one that still hasn't been answered.
Absolutely. So our products, typically the ones that we are focused on right now, are those for utilities and energies on one side. Our sustainability product, that's the one, or the biodiversity product, that enables one to monitor different parcels of land, whether they be forested land or otherwise, to look at what is the current, or map out what is the current biodiversity and how does that change over time. So I wouldn't still say that it's a product targeted towards forestry alone, but it is a product that can help understand the biodiversity associated with it.
And there was a question that was already answered, but maybe back to you, Vasilis. So you see, what is the turnaround time from image capture to delivery to the end user? I mean, our team already, of course, answered that it's very dependent on the provider, but maybe a quick summary or an example here could help the audience.
Yeah, it depends on the provider. For satellite imagery, I would say from capture to delivery, it might take up to 24 or 48 hours. But in some cases, it can take just a few hours with some providers, or if the customer chooses priority delivery, rush delivery. There are options where you can really get the data fast with a price uplift. But I would say the standard is 1.5 days.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, this is when new imagery is being tasked, and then from archive, the delivery can be basically instant, depending also a little bit on the provider, but that's the difference.
I was referring to tasking, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we have most of the other questions have been answered during the presentation itself, but we have probably time for one more before I say thank you to our amazing speakers. So maybe the last one, Niharika, you already answered it, but how can satellite technology be integrated with IoT devices for smarter vegetation management? I'm not sure if you want to add something to your summary that you already provided.
Yeah, I can quickly add to it, but effectively, I think that's why a satellite first approach works. When we talk about satellite first, while we have satellite based insights as our base insights, we can leverage virtually any other source of data to enhance it as required. So whether it be IoT devices, or for example, for vegetation that was mentioned, or it can be even cameras that have been installed for detecting wildfire. All of those kind of imagery or information can be leveraged and be used to enhance the insights that we have. So IoT for vegetation is frankly not something that we have seen or done in the past, but we have worked with many other types of data that we have used to enhance our insights. It can also always be scaled.
Thank you. Well, yeah. With that, on that note, I want to say again, maybe starting this time with the audience. Thank you to our very engaged audience for all the questions we have received, and of course, thank you for our amazing panelists. I really enjoyed this conversation today. Thank you for your time and effort. We will follow up with the recording of this webinar. Thank you for your time, and have a great morning, evening, afternoon, depending on where you are today. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.